and here, and here. In school gymnasiums, community centers, the living room down the block. You'll be where? Okay, we'll be there. Who are we? We're the movement that will beat Donald Trump. Welcome. We're going to have to sweat for it. We're going to have to sacrifice and fight. We're going to have to lead. Everyone is going to have to lead with kindness, humility, empathy, and not just talk, but action. Action today, action tomorrow. Action until we win. And we will win if we do this together. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. Now let's show them.
Thank you for joining this Biden-Harris campaign Hindu Americans for Biden national launch. And now, please welcome Nikki Shah.
Namaste. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namo Namaha. Before we begin, I meditate upon our Gurus who have eternally guided us on the path of Dharma based on 4 pillars: Satya or truth, Daya or compassion, Dan or giving, and finally Pavitrata or internal purification, so that we may all achieve our 4 Purushas or aims of human life: Dharma or righteousness, Artha or responsible financial well-being, Kama or desires, and Moksha where the soul is free. I would like to express my sincere gratitude on behalf of Hindu Americans for Biden and welcome you to our first of many engagements around issues important to our community. Former Vice President Biden has made it a priority to engage with Hindu Americans because we, as religious leaders, as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as scientists, as community organizers, and finally as policymakers, play an important role in creating a more perfect union by contributing to spiritual development, but also towards progress on economic, environmental, social, and governance issues of our times. And once again, we are tested by time to demonstrate through our dharmic values and karmas to build a more inclusive, resilient, and prosperous American society. With that said, I invite Gauri Agarwal ji to lead us through an Adhyatmik Chintan, or a spiritual reflection.
So I'm going to request everyone, we'll say 3 Oms all together, and then I'll say a couple of prayers. So please join me. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. From falsehood, lead me to truth. From darkness, lead me to light. From death, lead me to immortality. May all be happy. May none fall ill. May all see auspiciousness everywhere. May none ever feel sorrow. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Gauriji, for a meaningful chintan. I would now like to introduce Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi to deliver his remarks. Congressman Krishnamoorthi was elected in 2016 to represent Illinois' 8th district, and he took oath of office on his family Bhagavad Gita. This act alone by Mr. Krishnamoorthi will inspire Hindu youth to act on their values and serve the country. Congressman Krishnamoorthi serves on the Oversight Committee and also as the chairman of the Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy, as well as on the House Intelligence Committee, Steering and Policy Committee. His policy platform focuses on growing and strengthening the middle class by supporting small businesses, rebuilding our infrastructure, and protecting Social Security and Medicare. To help deal with the coronavirus pandemic, Congressman Krishnamoorthi introduced the Coronavirus Healthcare Worker Wellness Act of 2020 to award grants to healthcare providers to establish or expand programs dedicated to promoting mental wellness among their healthcare workers, including contractors who are working on the front lines of the pandemic. He is an advocate for making the economy work for all and has worked tirelessly to make college more affordable. He has helped provide affordable housing, develop technology in the national security and renewable energy industries, and co-founded Inspire, a nonprofit that provides inner city students and veterans with training in solar technology. Congressman Krishnamoorthi's life story and career achievements not only inspire, but serve as role model for Hindu American youth and people from all walks of life. With that background, I turn it over to Congressman Krishnamoorthi for his remarks.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me, Nikki?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. Namaste to everybody. Thank you so much for having me. And Ms. Agarwal, that was just so beautiful. Your shloka and your prayer for all of us. I think that set exactly the right tone for what we're trying to accomplish tonight. I want to say a special thank you to Nikki and to Amit Jani. I want to say a special thank you to Mahmood and Raj. And I see Vinay is, looks like handling the sound. And thank you for doing what you're doing. I like to begin with a little light observation, which is I'm so honored to be with you, and I'm so honored to be someplace where they can pronounce my name properly. It's a true story. When I first ran for office here in Illinois, I introduced myself in Chicago. I said, hi, my name is Raja Krishnamoorthi. And the person looking at me said, Roger Christian Murphy. Very nice to meet you. And then he said, I didn't know the Irish made it to India. And so it's so nice to be someplace where my name is pronounced properly and you all are good friends and I've known you for a very long time. I want to try to keep my remarks rather brief because I know that you have an extensive program tonight. And so I wanted to make 3 points tonight and then allow folks to move on with the program. The first point I wanted to make is I believe it's so important to elect Joe Biden because of the concept that we believe in as Hindu Americans called Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. The world is one family. And what that really means in a day-to-day sense is we treat every single person equally with dignity and respect. We do not believe in discrimination of any kind. That is our core tenet as Hindus. Unfortunately, however, over the last 4 years, we've seen a rise in hate, we've seen a rise in discrimination, and we've seen a rise in intolerance. And that intolerance has been directed at Hindu Americans as well. I don't need to remind all of you about the horrible vandalism that happened at Maninagar Swaminarayan Temple in Kentucky, and the countless other acts of vandalism and discrimination that have been directed at Hindu Americans and Indian Americans over the last 4 years. Unfortunately, that rise in discrimination has been fostered by leadership at the very top of our government. And that is why one of my first acts in Congress was to put together a hate crimes commission piece of legislation. It quickly commanded a lot of support within the Congress. However, the one problem is it will not be signed into law by the current president. Unfortunately, our current president pits people against each other. He stokes divisions. He does exactly the opposite of what this holy command of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam directs us to do. And therefore, those actions are incompatible, in my humble opinion, with the way that you and I live our lives and the way, most importantly, that we want our children to live theirs. And we want our families to experience in this country. And so that's why I'm so strongly in favor of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a man of faith. He's a man of principle. Most importantly, he's a man who believes in equality. And he believes that everyone should be treated the same with dignity and respect. And as a man of faith himself, he believes that morality does have a place in the White House and that government should be conducted according to our highest ideals. And that is why, as a Hindu American, I'm so proud to support someone of the character and the compassion and the dignity and classiness of Joe Biden. Now, my second point is, we not only will be hiring a wonderful president when we elect Joe Biden, someone who's compatible with our beliefs as Hindu Americans, we'll also be electing a vice president who is of an equally very high caliber in Kamala Harris. As you know, Kamala has Indian roots, and on her mother's side, they are Hindus. And if you look at pictures of their family, you can see your own in those pictures. And I've been with Kamala Harris. I know that she very much values her ties to the Hindu American community. She knows about our culture. She knows about our values. She knows about our traditions. And indeed, she has a lot of Hindu American family members in Texas, by the way, whom I've met. And they are fine people, and they keep her anchored in our culture and traditions and values as well. And it will be so proud, it's such a proud moment, the day that she gets elected Vice President of the United States. That day, Indian American boys and girls throughout the country will wake up and realize that they can be vice president and president of the United States too. Now let me segue to my third and final point, which is this. There's an old saying in Washington, D.C., which is, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And none of us on this Zoom call, or our families, or our communities, or Hindu Americans as a whole can afford to be on the menu, and neither can our agenda. And so that's why it's so important that you vote. This year will present the most important election of our lifetime before us in 60 days on November 3rd. And believe it or not, the 2 million Hindu Americans in this country will be a vital and key voting bloc in several swing states, not only Florida, but Virginia and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, and the list goes on and on. And so it is our duty, indeed it is our dharma to vote. And that is why I think it's so important to make a plan starting today. It doesn't matter whether you mail in your ballot, it doesn't matter whether you early vote, and of course, if you decide you want to vote in person, make a plan and make sure that you do it in a safe and responsible way. But not only that, I want you to please reach out to your neighbors, to your family members, your friends, your loved ones, and everybody you know to make a plan as well. It's that important. Why? Because we as Hindus believe in certain concepts that are going to be on the ballot this year. Do we believe in justice for all? Do we believe in equality for all? Will our country aspire to the ideal of a high quality education for all? And most importantly, when Ms. Agarwal said, Shanti, 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 do we believe in peace for all? The answer is yes. Yes, 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 and yes to all those questions. And that is why we have to vote, because all those questions are on the ballot this year when you decide between Joe Biden and the current occupant of the White House. That is what is at stake. And as Hindu Americans, I think the question of whom we should support is very easy to answer. It's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So please make a plan, tell your friends and family and your neighbors and your loved ones and colleagues to do the same. And we as Hindu Americans will help to achieve those ideals that are an essential part of our religion and a vital part of what it means to be an American. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, for sharing reasons why you support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and what we can do as a community to make sure that we vote and that we send in our mail-in ballots and that especially we vote for Democrats across the ballot. As a community, we have been confronted with hate crimes and acts of vandalism directed towards places of worship like our Mandirs. It is time to stop that through our engagement, because these crimes are unacceptable. And we should know that if elected, the Biden administration is committed to citizens' right to worship and will prosecute hate crimes and protect mandirs, derasars, and gurudwaras from acts of vandalism. We have seen certain instances. Just over a year ago, in January of 2019, a Swaminarayan temple in Louisville, Kentucky, which our next panelist, Mr. Raj Patel, belongs to. It was vandalized with messages that showed disrespect for other faith groups to coexist in a community setting. The Swaminarayan Sampradaya, as other Sampradayas in the Hindu American community, add value to community building by fostering inclusive spiritual development, solving problems, building character of children and youth, providing social services around health and education, and selflessly feeding individuals in communities without looking at the person's race, age, gender, income, education, or housing status. And when the mandir is vandalized, the sampradaya not only faces a financial burden, but is also confronted with challenges to provide community services. But more importantly, it hurts our collective dharmic sentiments. And so at this time, we would like to hear firsthand from Raj experience and response after witnessing the mandir's destruction, which was caused by lack of compassion and understanding. Raj, it's all yours.
Thank you, Nikki. Justin, do you have the PowerPoint slides? Thank you. Good evening, and thank you again for allowing me to speak on this topic and provide firsthand insights to the experience someone, an organization, or even a mandir has to go through. Again, thank you for all the wonderful volunteers who made this possible. While the title of this event is Hindu Americans for Biden, I would like to note I'm putting parties aside, and I'm here representing my temple and my experience. With the current state of our country, both parties have to do what's right for its citizens, which is to protect them and their rights, especially when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of religion. A little background. My temple is located in Louisville, Kentucky. While we are part of a larger organization, Sri Swaminarayan Gadi Maninagar, which has a handful of temples here in the US as well as internationally, my temple is also one of 4 Hindu temples in the greater Louisville area. On a normal day, we have about 50 to 75 people present. We enjoy time praising, singing, and understanding the Lord's teachings. And after services are complete, we have a family-style dinner where all members of the temple catch up, eat, and network. Pretty normal for many Hindu temples here in the US. However, in late January, things were a little different. Services and dinners ended normally, members cleaned up and said their goodbyes. A few leaders of the temple stayed back to discuss some repairs that needed to take place. And we hired a handyman to come in to evaluate the necessary repairs. If you could turn to slide 2. A few days later, the handyman entered the temple and noticed broken glass. He immediately notified leadership, who called the police, and the police came in and did their investigation. The next morning, temple leadership met at the temple to see what happened, walked the grounds, and saw the images that you see now. Shortly after, the elders and some of the other leadership members came in, and you could honestly see fear, anger, embarrassment, sorrow coming down their faces, especially as they saw the image of Swaminarayan Bhagwan's eyes spray painted. Local officials did their jobs. They worked with the FBI to notify the issue. They dispatched cars to all the local Hindu temples, as well as minority-led religious establishments, to ensure their safety as well as our safety. And then for a few days onwards, they continued to be patrolled. We as Mandir folks pondered on what to do. Should we make this public, or should we keep it away from media's attention? We never experienced anything like this. So as peaceful people, as Hindus, we respect our communities. We help out in any way possible. And I think Nikki summed it up pretty well. You know, we add value to our communities. So why did this happen to us? We feared if we went public, we'll paint targets on our backs. But we also understood if we did absolutely nothing, these types of attacks and hate crimes would continue, not just to my temple, but it also gives them permission to do it to all the other Hindu temples as well as other minority-led establishments here in the US. So we decided that we must stand up and let our voices be heard. The mayor of Louisville, the chief of police, local representatives such as Nima Kulkarni, all helped and guided us in the best way possible on how to handle this. We had a press conference from the temple with local media to address the matter. As the news went viral, I was dumbfounded by the number of organizations, groups, people who reached out to us to support us. Not only did the city of Louisville provide us with the necessary resources, but all the national organizations did too, such as such as the Hindu American Foundation, state organizations, specifically to Kentucky, such as the Indian American Relations Council, local groups like the Center of Interfaith Relationships, and fellow neighboring religious establishments, be it Christians, Jews, mosques, they all came. Everyone was willing to help. And if you turn to slide 3, you'll see that the mayor called for a day of cleanup. You know, a few days after the incident, he wanted to paint the hate away. So we organized it. We initially anticipated about 100 to 200 people to show up, but we were absolutely wrong with those estimates. About 2,500 people showed up from the community. They traveled from out of state, some flew in, you name it, they were all over there. Even elected officials came up. This included Congressman John Yermouth from Kentucky, Governor Matt Bevin, Andy Bashir, who was the Attorney General, but who is currently the Governor of Kentucky now, and many more. But if you turn to slide 4, you'll see that the community showed up to paint the hate away. All faith groups and non-faith groups came. They came with paintbrushes, rollers, trash bags, brooms. The lines of these people were wrapped around the block. I mean, you could not find parking. You know, when the incident took place, we were scared, we were angry, but after this event, we realized there's more good in the world. There's more unity in the world. And we don't want to allow one bad person to represent a faith or vandalize a peaceful Mandit. And even if that individual was spray painting a particular faith, he was not representing that religion. If you look at the core values of all religions, they're all fundamentally the same. It's all peace. And it doesn't matter who your neighbor is or what color he is or what faith he is. It's all about love and compassion. And did the fear leave us after the event and the cleanup event? No. We're still learning to better manage it day to day. Going through the experience like this keeps everyone on high alert. I mean, there's not a time where we're looking back or accounting for kids or the elders are hesitant to use the bathroom. There's still that scare factor and fear factor in people's backs. But we're taking necessary precautions, you know, such as updating the security systems and cameras and, you know, having someone at the post at the door. Anything that will help the members feel at peace and more comfortable. And hopefully we could be back to where we were before this event took place. I'd like to end this by saying we have to know who our community leaders are. We need to be able to identify the law enforcement members that we need to talk to, as well as elected officials. We have to know what resources we have to leverage when we are targets of hate crimes and discriminations. I can't tell you enough where there's a lot of Indians or Hindus or Asians in general that just won't vocalize what happens. And that's wrong. We need to vocalize and we need to do what's right. And we need to be able to say, we are citizens of this country as well. We're not foreigners. Again, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share my story. Hopefully this was of value. I'll turn it back over to Nikki.
Raj bhai, koti koti dhanyavad. Thank you so much for sharing your heartfelt experience, and very sorry that this has happened. And it's a great story of how the community comes together to rebuild not only the Mandir, but also the community. This is yet another example of how the Swaminarayan community, Sampradaya in Louisville, Kentucky, demonstrates dharmic values into action by responding with kindness and compassion when confronted with violence, hate, and bigotry. There are many other instances. A few in 2006, a Hindu Mandir in Maples Grove, Minneapolis, Minnesota, founded by Shri Shashikant and Kumud Sane, among other founders, was faced with vandalism. The Hindu Mandir and 11 deities were vandalized by 2 teen boys who were later convicted of 3 felonies each. The Hindu community led by Dr. Shashikant Sane and Kumud Sane appeared in front of the court to seek forgiveness and expunge their felonies at the end of the 5-year period. But they were guided by compassion and kindness to rehabilitate these 2 boys through community service at the temple. And there are many temples across the country that are participating in this kind of community service. Dr. Kumud Sane and I served as AmeriCorps Vistas for the Hindu American Seva communities founded by Anju Bhargava, who served on President Obama's Advisory Council for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. As part of our service to the country, we provided yoga and nutrition services based on Ayurvedic teachings as part of our focus on maternal and child health. We placed mothers and children at the front. In my hometown, Passaic, New Jersey, we also helped build Mandir to source solar energy. We collaborated with the Department of Homeland Security to develop a guide for places of worship, including the Hindu community, to protect their communities and infrastructure from hate crimes and vandalism. In Bridgewater, New Jersey, we ran a simulation exercise in partnership with New Jersey Department of Homeland Security, Hindu Temple, and Sikh Gurudwara to understand how we can protect ourselves if such incidents occur. It is now time that we as a community work together and advance these efforts through continuous engagement. Under the Trump administration, hate crimes against Hindus have nearly tripled. This is a substantial jump that cannot be explained away and is no doubt attributable in part to President Trump's divisive rhetoric. On March 20th, 2016, Shankar Shastriji found a severed cow head at the Lakshmi Cow and Animal Sanctuary in Upper Mount Bethel Township, Pennsylvania. This is a cow sanctuary that my family and I, along with others in the Hindu community, visit once a month to perform Gau Seva based on our dharmic teachings. Lakshmi Cow and Animal Sanctuary was founded by Shastriji as a home for cows, driven by his Hindu beliefs. Police called the incident ethnic intimidation. These incidents have occurred not only in Pennsylvania, but also in cities like New York, where Swami Harish Chandra Puriji was beaten and thrashed just blocks away from Shiv Shakti Peeth Temple in Queens on July 18, 2019. While there was support from local officials, the police characterized this a crime perpetrated by somebody who is mentally disturbed, rather than a hate crime. Nonetheless, the compassion demonstrated by Swamiji is unimaginable, as he advocated for forgiving the perpetrator. Incidents like these remind us that hate crimes and acts of vandalism directed towards places of worship is unacceptable, and that if elected, the Biden administration is committed to citizens' right to worship and prosecuting hate crimes and protecting mandirs from acts of vandalism. Moving forward, I would now like to introduce Mahmood, policy analyst with the Biden campaign, to talk about former Vice President Biden's policies to address the rise in hate crimes and his plans to protect houses of worship. Mahmood earned a MPhil in political theory from University of Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. In 2016, he earned a BA in politics from Oberlin College and was also named a Truman Scholar for his leadership in public service. His professional experience spans speechwriting, electoral politics, and public policy development and analysis. His focus is on environmental sustainability, transportation, and immigration. The floor is all yours, Mahmood.
Thank you, Nikki, and namaste to all. I appreciate you all taking the time to be here with this event this evening. I want to go back to something that Nikki said very quickly, and that is that according to the FBI, under this president, hate crimes against Hindus have tripled since he's been elected. They've tripled. I want us all to sit with that for a second. It is my very strong belief that at a minimum, it should be an expectation that when we have that phenomena going on, hate crimes tripling at the rate that they currently are, we have a president who has an actual plan and a commitment to combat hate crimes. That should be the very least minimum expectation. But instead, it seems like we have a president who seemingly with every word that he speaks goes out of his way to actually encourage hate crimes. It was mentioned earlier, but you all remember what happened in Charlottesville in 2017 when a group of white nationalists came together to protest. And what did President Trump do? He called them very fine people. I honestly don't really have the right word to describe it, but unacceptable comes close. We need a president who's going to prioritize putting an end to all hate crimes against all minority communities, but especially the Hindu community, and certainly not have a president who goes out of his way to encourage them. So I'm very proud that Vice President Biden has a plan to combat hate crimes, and I want to spend a couple minutes talking about that with all of you. So it all starts with the Department of Justice, which is the primary law enforcement agency in the United States. And first and foremost, he said this many times, but something that's very important to Vice President Biden is that his administration looks like the rest of the country. So that means having all types of people that reflect the full diversity of the country, including the Hindu American community. You can see, Hindus are very well represented within our campaign, and certainly if Vice President Biden wins, that would be the case within the administration. Further than that, at the Department of Justice, Biden has already committed to appointing leaders with a mandate to prioritize the prosecution of hate crimes. And so beyond just having that priority, he's going to make sure that they have the resources that they need to fight back against that rising tide of white nationalism. There are also a few legislative proposals that he's behind that would help us fight against hate crimes. One example of that is legislation that would prohibit someone who's been convicted of a hate crime from purchasing or possessing a firearm. We've all seen what's been going on with gun violence in this country over the past few years. And when you marry that to the rising tide of white nationalism in this country, it can become very deadly very quickly. So that's why Vice President Biden is fully in support of that legislation. Another piece of legislation that the Vice President supports is a law that would increase the potential sentence for certain hate crimes that occur in places of worship, such as Mandirs. That is a big focus for the Vice President, not just because core to the American experience is the idea that we are all free to worship as we wish, but really fundamentally, there's no more important thing to our own humanity as individuals, as being able to worship how we wish, be in community with one another without being in fear of someone attacking us. So that's why Vice President Biden is going to make protecting places of worship a priority. And the core of that approach is making sure that all houses of worship have the adequate funding they need. So as many of you know, much of the funding that many nonprofit houses of worship get is through donations. And though, particularly in the Hindu community, we've seen tremendous work done on the philanthropic front. Security is something that's too important to be left to the whim of private donations. So something that Vice President Biden will commit to is making sure that the Hindu community and all religious communities have the full backing of the federal government in terms of funding to make sure that they're properly secured. So specifically, there's a program at the Department of Homeland Security called the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. And what the money for that program does is a couple of things to help places of worship. Number one is to help build physical infrastructure to help guard against arson and other forms of attack. Number two is hire trained armed security personnel. Another thing is conduct communal security training, implement facility access controls, and then improve emergency preparedness and life-saving incident response protocols. So between the Department of Justice, potential legislation, more funding, these are all things that the Biden administration can do with the power of the rule of law and the power of the federal government. But as you all know, and I would suggest that there's something that's even stronger than the power of the rule of law, and that's the power of the moral authority of the President of the United States. And there's really nothing that compares to that. Vice President Biden was in Kenosha, Wisconsin today, speaking about some of the violence that's occurred between police and the African-American community. And he said something he's said often, but never becomes less important. And that's that the words of the president matter, the actions of the president matter, and the moral authority that the president brings to the job really matters. And so that's why it's so important that Vice President Biden is someone that deeply appreciates the Hindu community and has always gone out of his way to uplift it. And we can commit that if elected president, Vice President Biden would celebrate Hindu holidays at the White House That was something that was done at the in the Obama-Biden administration for those 8 years. They celebrated Diwali there at the White House and at the Vice President's residence, as well as at the Pentagon. Earlier in this campaign, he recognized Holi and other Hindu holidays. So you can all take my word for it that Vice President Biden will use his moral authority to always uplift and protect the Hindu community, particularly when it comes to places of worship. There's a lot more I could speak to, but I know I'm out of time here. So I would just encourage you all, if you want to learn more about the Vice President's policy platform, go to joebiden.com/vision. You can read more there. And again, just want to thank you all for all that you're doing to engage in this election. We're going to win this thing in 61 days, and it's going to be because of the hard work that you're all doing. So thank you again. And I'll pass it back to Nikki now.
Thank you, Mahmood, for sharing former Vice President Biden's policies and plans to protect citizens' right to worship freely and protect houses of worship from vandalism. I'm just going to take some time before I turn it over to Amit to share with you that Hindus for Biden is active on Facebook and Twitter and on social media. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything that you want to share, please feel free to reach us on the social media platform. We will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Now I would like to introduce Amit Jani, who is currently serving as the Director of Asian American Pacific Islander Outreach for former Vice President Biden. Amit previously served in New Jersey Governor's Phil Murphy's administration and as a congressional aide for Congressman Frank Pallone Jr. in New Jersey's 6th Congressional District. He also worked in a legislative capacity for Congressman Judy Chu and the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Amit helped to found the New Jersey Leadership Program, which helps to place South Asian youth in local government through summer internships while teaching them about the government, politics, and community engagement. Amit is a contributor to the Huffington Post and was named as a 30 under 30 in New Jersey politics by the Observer magazine. Very thankful and grateful to have you, Amit.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I really appreciate your time and all your support. I think Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi summed it up the best when he said, voting is really our dharma, So voting is, at the very heart of who we are as a society. There's no more important duty for us as Americans or Hindu Americans, Indian Americans, and Americans in general. This really is the most consequential election of our lifetimes. And it's important that we ensure that the voices of, Hindu Americans are heard loud and clear. So that's why, as all the speakers before you said, it's so important to register to vote, to check your mail, and to request a ballot. I remember growing up, I know our community wasn't always as involved, but it's so heartening to see the Hindu American community really, getting excited this time around and making sure that, we elect the right leader in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and get the current occupant of the White House out. So that's why I'm so excited to be here and to encourage everyone to really empower our community by voting, by registering, by making sure your family voted or will be voting is registered. We hope you check with your local county election offices or go to iwillvote.com to learn more about registering to vote, mail-in ballots, or for voting in person. And if you're not registered to vote, be sure to go to vote.gov, that's vote.gov, to register, and then take the time to make sure that your family, your friends, community members, folks in your temple are also registered to vote. Also, bank the vote. If possible, vote early. If you're deciding to vote in person, please plan in advance so you can participate safely and in a timely manner. And also, the other big piece of this is really connecting with our community. It's really phone banking, reaching other Hindu Americans, other Indian Americans. We really can't ignore the significant impact that the Hindu American electorate is playing in such a decisive way in key states, including Virginia, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, just as an example. This really is the most consequential election of our lifetime, and we must have a concerted effort to really get out the vote, or as we call it on the campaign, GOTV. Hindu American communities hold a powerful and untapped potential to be a force for progressive change. And it's important that we ensure our communities have all the information they need to vote safely in a timely manner. And so, and in that sense, phone banking really is a great option to connect with one another. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we have our Asian American, Indian American phone banks where you can call folks across key battleground states, other Indian Americans. Also, we do in-language phone banking as well, which includes Hindi. So if you speak Hindi or another language, would love your support as well. So every Wednesday, we're doing that at 7 p.m. So we'll make sure to follow up to provide that information as well. In addition to joining our phone banks, you can also help us by lending your talent in other ways. We're sharing our volunteer sign-up form here in the chat box, which you can use to identify other ways you can get involved. For example, we're also looking for folks in the community who are willing to write op-eds about how their faith motivates them to support Vice President Biden and Senator Harris. So if you're interested in that kind of opportunity, please make sure you sign up. And lastly, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll drop a link in the chat box again for you to join and join us on social media. We have a Hindu Americans for Biden Facebook page where you can see your content tailored for the Hindu American community. And it's going to provide you helpful information that you can share out with your networks as well. And also join our WhatsApp group. So if you're on WhatsApp, we'll drop a link for you in the chat box as well. This group is a moderated group where there'll be few messages shared every week that you can push out to your networks. And these messages will, again, be tailored to the Hindu American community so that we're only sharing the most relevant information for our community. So with that, I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your support. If you haven't already gotten involved with the campaign, you can also text AAPI to 30330. That's AAPI to 30330. Or if you go to aapisforjoe.com, you can also sign up there as well. So again, just thank you so much for everything that you're doing. We really appreciate it. And as a Hindu American, I'm so proud to be a part of this campaign, to be working for someone in Joe Biden, who I really think is going to be an advocate for our community as president. So thank you again and have a good night.